I never thought I'd be the guy to catch his wife cheating, especially not in the most gut-wrenching way possible. Lisa and I had been together for nearly 10 years. We married young, built a life, and honestly, I thought we had something real. She always acted a little bitchy, yeah, but I figured that was just her personality, sarcastic, sharp-tongued, always quick with a cutting remark. Still, she was beautiful, ambitious, and I loved her in my own way. Things weren't perfect, but I figured we were solid. Then about 3 months ago, I started noticing her acting a little weird. Little things. Her phone going off more often than usual, her sneaking off to work when she said she was going to the store, and that strange look in her eyes whenever she thought I wasn't paying attention. I brushed it off at first. Everyone gets busy, right? But then I noticed she was wearing these new earrings she denied buying, and there was this strange perfume I didn't recognize on her. I even caught her laughing a little too hard when she was talking to someone over text, and she quickly hid her phone when I walked into the room. My gut was telling me something was off. I started paying closer attention. She'd come home late, smelling like perfume I knew wasn't hers, and her excuses got more flimsy every time I asked questions. But it was when I found her phone unlocked, something I rarely did, that I stumbled onto a message thread that made my stomach drop. It was from a guy named Jake, her guitar teacher. I'd actually hired him to help her reconnect with her passion for music. She always talked about how she wanted to get better, and I thought it was a good idea to support her. She was always saying she loved me but that she needed something more, or that I didn't quite get her. Well, as I scrolled through that thread, I saw something that made my blood boil. They had been practicing duets in our home studio while I was working late. I mean, not just casual jam sessions. It was obvious they were fucking around. She'd send him flirty messages, talking about how much she enjoyed their duets, how she loved the way he made her feel, and he responded with all the right kind of smarmy stuff, compliments, promises, and that bullshit about how talented she was, how she just needed to loosen up. I couldn't believe it. My wife, the woman I trusted with my life, was cheating on me with someone I brought into our home, someone I thought was just a music teacher. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. I stared at that screen for what felt like hours, trying to process what I was seeing. It didn't make sense. How could she lie so effortlessly? How could she betray me like this after all we've been through? I was furious, absolutely furious. My mind was racing, trying to figure out what to do, what her excuses would be, whether she'd even admit to it. But deep down, I already knew I had to confront her. I had to find out what was real and what was just another lie. All I could think about now was how betrayed I felt, how stupid I'd been to trust her so blindly. And I wondered how long this had been going on without me noticing. I also wondered what kind of person she really was. This bitchy, manipulative woman who could cheat behind my back and then lie her way out of it. That's when the anger really started to boil, and I knew I couldn't just sit on this anymore. I had to face her, confront her, and get some damn answers. When I finally decided to confront her, I knew I couldn't do it calmly. Not after finding out she'd been sneaking around in our own house, practicing duets with Jake while I was working late, like I was some idiot who wouldn't notice what was going on under my nose. I waited until she got home that evening, and I could feel my hands trembling as I grabbed her arm and pulled her into the living room. Her face was that familiar bitchy glare, like she didn't care, like I was bothering her. She looked at me like I was the crazy one, even though I was about to blow a gasket. I didn't waste time. I pulled out her phone and showed her the message thread from Jake, the one I'd read 100 times in my head. Her eyes widened at first, and then she started to deny everything, of course. Her voice went up an octave, that snarky edge creeping in as she spat out, "You're overreacting as usual. Jake's just a friend. It's nothing, just some stupid music thing." I didn't buy it, not for a second. I told her I knew about the duets, how they'd been practicing in our house, and how I saw the messages. Her face twisted into this nasty sneer as she told me I was paranoid, that I was jealous, that I was making a mountain out of a molehill. She kept lying, twisting everything to make herself the victim. "You're just mad because I don't want to have sex with you anymore," she snapped. "Maybe if you weren't never around, I'd have more time for myself." That was when I lost it. I told her that her lies, her cheating, that she was nothing but a selfish bitch who only cared about herself. I told her I'd never seen such a manipulative, two-faced person in my life. She just laughed, that cold, bitter laugh that made me want to smash something. She said I was overreacting, that I didn't understand her, that I was just jealous because I was boring and not enough. I could feel the anger boiling inside me, but I also felt the ache, like I'd been punched in the stomach all over again. How could she sit there and lie so effortlessly, like she didn't care about the damage she was causing? I stormed out of the room, trying to process everything. It was early evening, but I couldn't sit still. I kept replaying her words, her lies, how she dismissed everything I found. I felt betrayed, angry, humiliated. How could the woman I loved, the woman I married, be capable of lying so blatantly? I poured a glass of whiskey and sat outside on the porch, trying to calm my racing mind. But inside, I knew this wasn't over, not by a long shot. I decided I had to gather more proof, figure out how deep this went, and plan my next move. Because at that moment, I realized Lisa wasn't just cheating. I was dealing with someone who had no regard for me, for us, for what we built. And I wasn't going to let her get away with it without a fight. That's when the plan started forming in my head. I needed to see how far she'd go, how much she'd lie, and what her next move was going to be. I had to be ready for whatever was coming. Over the next few days, I couldn't sleep. My mind kept circling around everything I'd uncovered. I kept asking myself why she'd do this, how she thought she could get away with it, and what I'd done to deserve this kind of betrayal. Every time I saw her bitchy smirk or heard her lie about being busy with work, I'd get reminded of those messages, of her practicing duets with Jake, of all the times I'd been blind to what was happening right under my nose. I decided I needed more concrete proof. I started watching her more carefully, paying attention to her routines, her phone habits, her body language. The first thing I noticed was how she'd become even more defensive whenever I asked about her whereabouts. She'd brush me off, say I was paranoid, say I was overreacting again. That sneer, that sarcastic tone, she was good at pretending everything was fine, but I could see the cracks in her facade. One afternoon, I followed her when she said she was going to run some errands. She slipped out and went straight to her hairdresser, but I knew she wasn't just getting her hair done. Instead, I parked across the street and waited. After about 20 minutes, she walked out. No bag, no hair products, just a strange, secretive look on her face. Then she headed straight to the local coffee shop. I slipped behind a corner and watched her enter. That's when I saw her meet Jake in the back corner, where I knew they must have been meeting for months now without my knowing. That moment I felt like I'd been hit again. I saw them sitting close, whispering. Her hand was on his arm at one point. They looked comfortable, too comfortable. I knew then I had to act fast. I wasn't going to let her keep this secret anymore. I kept my distance, snapping a few photos with my phone, enough evidence to make her realize I wasn't bluffing. I went home, furious but with a clearer plan. Later that night, I sat her down in the living room again. I told her I knew she'd been lying, that I followed her, that I saw her meet Jake. Her reaction was almost laughable. Her eyes widened just for a second. Then her usual bitchy smirk spread across her face. She tried to deny everything, but I pulled out my phone and put the photos on the screen. Her face drained of color. I saw her eyes flicker with panic for maybe a second, then she threw her head back and scoffed at me. "You're so damn paranoid," she spat. "You think I'm cheating on you just because I went for a coffee? Jesus, you're pathetic." Her tone was venomous. I could see the anger behind her eyes, and that made me even angrier. How dare she call me paranoid? How dare she sit there and lie so brazenly after I had the evidence right in front of her? That night, I felt a mixture of rage and helplessness. I was furious at her lies, furious that she'd betrayed my trust, but also devastated that it had come to this, that the woman I thought I knew had been secretly sneaking around behind my back. I didn't sleep much that night. Instead, I kept replaying the moment I saw her meeting Jake, the way her face looked when I confronted her. That was the turning point I knew I needed to prepare myself for whatever was coming next, because I wasn't going to be a doormat anymore. Whatever her excuses, whatever lies she'd spin, I was done being naive. and I knew she was about to find out just how serious I was. The next few days were a blur. I felt like I was living in some kind of nightmare. Every time I looked at her, I saw that smirk, that sneer, the way she lied so effortlessly. She kept insisting she was just friends with Jake, that they were just practicing music, and that I was imagining things. But I knew better now. The evidence was right there, and I wasn't going to let her spin her way out of this like she'd done so many times before. I started planning my move carefully. I didn't want her to know I was onto her until I was ready. I kept collecting more proof, screenshots, recordings of her calls, even some hidden cameras I set up around the house to catch her in the act if she slipped up again. I didn't want to be the guy who just got angry and yelled. I wanted her to see that I had control of the situation, that I wasn't some naive fool anymore. One evening, I decided I'd had enough of her bullshit. I sat her down again, this time with every piece of evidence I could muster. She tried her usual antics, denying, insulting, throwing in that "you're just jealous" crap. Her voice got all bitchy and defensive, like she thought she was untouchable. But I was done with her lies. I told her, "You've been fucking around behind my back. I saw you meet Jake. I have the photos, the messages, everything. And I'm not going to sit here and listen to you lie your way out of this." Her face turned red with fury. She started screaming, calling me crazy, accusing me of spying on her, saying I was just insecure and that I was ruining everything. She actually had the nerve to say, "You don't own me, David. Maybe I need someone who actually cares about me instead of accusing me of every little thing." That was when I snapped. I told her she could spin all her lies, that I was done being played. I told her I wanted her out of the house, right then. If she was going to keep acting like that, she didn't leave quietly. No, she threw a tantrum, calling me every name in the book, saying I was controlling and paranoid and that I'd be sorry. But I didn't care. I just wanted her gone. I packed her bags while she yelled at me, told her to get her shit and never come back. When she finally stormed out, I felt a strange mix of relief and emptiness. I'd finally taken control, but I also knew that I'd just lost someone I'd loved for a long time. Later that night, I sat alone in the house, staring at the empty space where she used to be. The silence was deafening. I kept thinking about all the times she lied, how she'd dismiss my concerns, how she'd cheat and manipulate. I kept asking myself how I didn't see it earlier, how I missed all the signs. The pain was sharp, real, and raw. But beneath it all, a strange sense of clarity started to emerge. I realized I had been naive, that I'd trusted someone who didn't deserve it, and that I'd been blind to what she really was. This bitchy, selfish woman who used me. That night I finally cried. Not because I missed her, not because I was weak. I cried because I felt betrayed, because I felt stupid for ever trusting her in the first place. And I promised myself one thing: I wouldn't make that mistake again. I would learn from this, become stronger, and never let someone manipulate me like that again. Because if there's one thing I know now, it's that some people are just better at lying than you think. And sometimes the biggest betrayal comes from the person you love most. The days that followed felt like survival, not life. I kept busy, working late, avoiding the house, trying to block out the memories of her sneering face and the lies she told. I started seeing a counselor, someone to help process the flood of emotions. Honestly, I was torn between anger, sadness, and a strange sense of relief. Part of me wanted to chase after her, demand answers, yell at her for what she did. But another part knew that would only feed her ego and make things worse. I kept thinking about what I'd do if she tried to come back, if she ever did. My instinct was to shut the door, literally and figuratively. I realized I'd been a fool to trust someone so manipulative. The woman I married turned out to be nothing more than a bitchy liar who loved playing games. I knew I had to move on for my own sanity and future. One night, I was at a bar with some friends, drowning my frustrations in a shot of whiskey, when I got a text from a number I didn't recognize. It was a picture, her, with Jake, in some sketchy motel room. That was the final nail in the coffin. I stared at it, feeling that old anger rising again. She lied about everything, lied to my face, and now I saw her with him, probably screwing around in some cheap motel. If I thought I was angry before, it was nothing compared to this. This was the kind of betrayal that cut deep, knowing she'd gone that far, that she'd thrown away everything we had just to indulge in her selfish needs. I didn't respond to the message. I just sat there staring at the image, feeling a cold numbness settle over me. All the pain, all the heartbreak. It was like I'd been punched in the gut one last time. But beneath that numbness I also felt something else, a resolve, a decision that I'd had enough. I'd spent months chasing her lies, trying to make sense of it all, but now I knew I couldn't fix this. She was gone and I had to accept that. The following day I went to see my lawyer. I started the process of divorce. It wasn't easy, I won't lie, it hurt. But I knew that staying connected to someone so toxic would only drag me down. I had to cut her out of my life completely. I filed the papers, knowing that this was the only way to finally move forward and reclaim my happiness. In the end, I learned some hard truths. That trust is fragile, that some people will lie and cheat without remorse, and that revenge isn't always about doing something destructive. Sometimes, it's just about removing the poison from your life. I realized I deserved better, that I'd been a fool to stay so long, thinking I could fix her or that she'd change. But she didn't, and now I was free from her bullshit. Looking back, I wish I could say I learned something profound about love or trust. But honestly, I just learned to trust my gut, and that sometimes, the biggest act of self-love is walking away. If you're ever in a situation where someone's lying, cheating, or manipulating, don't wait for them to change. Cut them out. Protect yourself. Because no one's worth losing your peace over, especially not some selfish bitch who only cares about her own needs. Now sitting here alone in my apartment, I've had nothing but time to reflect. That woman, Lisa, she was my wife, my best friend, or so I thought. Turns out she was just another liar, another betrayal I fell for. I didn't want to believe it, but I saw her true colors, and honestly, it was a relief in a way. I don't think I'd ever really known her at all. Everything was a lie, her smiles, her bitchy attitude, her constant deceptions. And now I finally see her for what she was, someone who used me, played with my trust, and then tossed me aside. I've learned a lot from this. For one, never ignore the small signs, they add up. The little sneer. The quick lies, the way she avoided my questions, those weren't just coincidence. They were red flags and I ignored them because I loved her. But love doesn't mean blind trust. Love means respect, honesty, and loyalty, and she had none of that. Most importantly, I learned to stand up for myself. I'm not perfect, far from it, but I refuse to be anyone's fool anymore. I've started rebuilding my life, focusing on what truly matters, my health, my work, my future. I know I'll be okay because I finally see the truth. I see the kind of person she was, the selfish, manipulative bitch who thought she could get away with anything. To anyone reading this who's going through something similar, I'll tell you this: trust your instincts. Don't settle for lies or betrayal. When you see the signs, confront it head-on and don't be afraid to walk away if that's what's needed. Your happiness, your sanity, your self-respect, those are things worth fighting for. And to be honest, I'm grateful it happened. Not because I wanted her to cheat or lie, but because now I know what I don't want. I've been burned, yes, but I'm also stronger. I've learned that some people are just not worth the pain. You have to cut them loose before they drag you down too far. I'm ready to start fresh, alone if I have to, but free from the lies she tried to keep alive. I'll find someone who actually respects me, who's honest, who refuses to lie and cheat behind my back. That's what I deserve. So here I am, finally letting go. It hurts. God, it hurts so much, but I know I'll survive. Because every betrayal, every heartbreak teaches us something. And the biggest lesson I've learned is to never let anyone make me feel small or unworthy. I am better than that. I am stronger than that. And today, I finally feel free.